Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime with Liverpool back in Premier League action on Saturday evening. We have got a 5:30 kickoff at Vicarage Road. We'll be up against Watford and we will be fighting for what would be a record-breaking 19th consecutive league win. That would break the Premier League record. I'm pretty sure it would break the top flight record for the entire history of English football as well, which would be an absolutely phenomenal thing for Liverpool to manage in what is already becoming an absolutely phenomenal season. And the team that stands in our way is, of course, Watford FC, managed by Nigel Pearson. And I think it's going to be a really, really tough game. I'll come on to, a little bit more about the opponent and tactical analysis and stuff like that later on in the video. But I think what is very, very clear is they are a team who are 19th in the Premier League at the moment. They are fighting for their lives. They're on 24 points. If they can get just one extra point, as it stands, that would take them out of the relegation zone. They're in a very, very similar situation to what Norwich were in when we played them and what West Ham were in when we played them last weekend as well. It's kind of worked out odd in a way that our last three Premier League matches have all been against teams in the relegation zone. But if there's anything that was shown by those two matches against Norwich and West Ham, it's that these teams will absolutely fight for anything, perhaps more so than the mid-table fodder, perhaps more so than even looking at a team like Arsenal, whose season has basically gone down the pan, and the same goes for a team like Tottenham Hotspur. These teams have got absolutely everything on the line and they will scrap for it and they will try to win the game by any means necessary. So Liverpool have got to be focused, and that's an interesting thing that Jurgen Klopp really, really emphasised in his press conference when he was asked about whether we got a little bit complacent in the game against West Ham, which is an understandable question given that we were very, very off it for the first hour. We just didn't really kind of, get out of third gear or anything like that. And then as soon as West Ham go 2-1 up, Liverpool were a completely different beast. So I think questions were asked there of whether or not the team needed to go 2-1 down before they actually turned on the style and played their best game against West Ham. Jurgen Klopp batted that away and said it wasn't a complacency thing. It's not like these players, don't care or think they're too good for the opposition they're up against. It is just a focus thing, which is understandable given how long the season goes on for. And also, not to try and tie focus into complacency or anything like that, but when you are as far ahead as Liverpool are, it can almost be quite easy to lose your focus. You think about when teams are like 6-0 up with 5 minutes to go and stuff like that, and they have relatively easy chances to score, but they overcomplicate them just to try and score an even better goal or something like that. That's potentially the situation Liverpool are in at the moment, where the team is more focused potentially on style over substance, on trying to, work the opportunity to the point where they create a perfect chance, rather than just acting as this battering ram which endlessly breaks down opposition defences. That is, a reasonable argument, I think, when attributed to the West Ham game, because once it got to that last half hour, we almost ditched the idea of scoring the perfect goal, of trying to carve them open with a scalpel and just coming at them with a hammer and just endlessly going at the West Ham defence, until eventually we managed to force our way through twice and get those 3 points. And I think that is exactly how it's probably going to have to play out for Liverpool in this game. I think just going at Watford endlessly, trying to break them down, trying to be the relentless side that we have become, and hopefully we'll come out the other side with yet another 3 points. That would, of course, with Manchester City not playing this weekend because they're playing in the League Cup final, so their league match has been postponed, it would put Liverpool at a ridiculous 25-point lead at the top of the Premier League table. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's first of all go all the way back to what players are actually going to start the game for Liverpool. In terms of injury news, Jurgen Klopp gave a little update in his press conference. Jordan Henderson will not be available for this match. He's continuing his rehab. We still don't know for sure whether he's going to be back before the international break, but personally I wouldn't hold your breath, because given the 3-week prognosis we were given and the fact that that runs out right before the international break, I think it makes more sense to just keep him, on the treatment table until after those England matches, and then hopefully he can miss them out as well, and then come back very, very fresh for that final push at the end of the season in April and May. So he'll definitely not be available for this game, although Klopp said he's progressing quite nicely. The same with James Milner. He's not available, but apparently his progress is even further along, and there is a slim chance that he could even be available for the FA Cup match against Chelsea on Tuesday night, which would be a huge bonus both for Liverpool and for him, because I think that's the kind of game where we'd look to do a little bit of rotation, although I think that will start to, have less of an effect on the FA Cup lineups as we get to this latter stage of the competition going into the 5th round. You can now see, the silverware is in sight there now as well. So it would be great to have James Milner available for that, although unfortunately he will not be able to play for us in this game against Watford at the weekend. And also Xherdan Shaqiri, who we don't really have a prognosis at all. It's hard to really remember when he actually picked up this injury, because it's happened so many times from this season where he's made a comeback for like 1 or 2 games or something like that. He's made appearances on the bench, and he's picked up yet another knock in training, and he's just constantly in and out of the treatment room and in and out of the side, and he will not be available for this game. goodness only knows when he's going to be back. Jurgen Klopp has not given us a number on that. Apart from that, the other big selection question that Jurgen Klopp did confront, or at least was confronted with in his press conference, was the Oxlade-Chamberlain versus Naby Keita situation. Obviously, with Jordan Henderson out, Fabinho and Gini Wijnaldum are pretty much nailed on. They've done more than enough to, cement their place in the starting 11. And of course, with Jordan Henderson in the side, that three was pretty much nailed on as the midfield that he'd go with, especially in the really big games. Now Jordan Henderson's out, it's been seen as this fight between Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain to see who gets that starting berth. Jurgen Klopp very much emphasised that it isn't a fight. They're not competing with each other. It's much more about their individual attributes and what they can offer the team in terms of, what they can offer that no one else can. And I think both of those players are very, very individual in that manner. They are two footballers who, when they come off the bench, you know exactly what they're going to offer. And when you see them in the starting lineup, you always think that clearly Jurgen Klopp's got a plan. He's put that player in the lineup because he has an idea of how he wants to play this game, and they will facilitate that. Oxlade-Chamberlain is all about the driving runs forward, the counter-attacking, the pressing as well. Naby Keita is a much more intricate footballer. He's a very good dribbler, very good passer of the ball as well, but maybe defensively and in terms of pressing, he isn't quite as in tune with everyone else as Oxlade-Chamberlain is. But that's what Jurgen Klopp emphasised. He says it's not a matter of who's better, it's more about who is better for the task in hand, and I think that is what we'll see in terms of who he chooses in the lineup for the game this weekend. So speaking of the starting 11, I reckon it's going to be Alisson Becker in goal. Not even going to bother justifying that one. I believe he's on 12 clean sheets in all competitions now, which, doing the maths very quickly in my head, works out, I believe, at 10 in the Premier League, which is absolutely phenomenal given the amount of games he missed. In front of him, I think it's going to be Gomez and Van Dijk. No knocks or anything there to speak of, so they should be fine to start this game. Either side of them, once again, no changes. I'm imagining, I reckon it will be Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold as your fullback pairing. Moving on to the midfield, as I said, Fabinho, pardon me, and Gini Wijnaldum have both more than justified their places in the starting 11, so I think they will return. And then alongside them, I think it's going to be Oxlade-Chamberlain, because he was just fantastic against West Ham for that last half hour, and there are mitigating circumstances to that. Often players like him, and Divock Origi as well is a prime example of players who look brilliant coming off the bench, and some of it is because the opposition are tired, some of it is because they've had time to watch the game removed from the actual context of it, tactically analyse it from the bench and work out exactly what role they can play. And of course, when they come on, they've got a coach in their ear telling them exactly what to do, and that can hugely influence a player's performance, I think, relative to someone who has to start the game, feel their way in, work things out while playing at the same time. But I think given what Ox offered, we're going to want to play a similar way against Watford. Like I said, that battering ram style. I know they're going to sit deep, but it is at Vicarage Road, and they do need all 3 points, so they'll have to come out at some point. And I think what almost happened against West Ham was, even though the logical thing was for them to sit deep, we were pressing them so often that they almost, for starters, they thought there might be a counter-attack on, and they started to commit players forward like that. And also, I think we just never gave them a chance to regain any shape. And I think under those circumstances, Oxlade-Chamberlain absolutely thrives. He loves the chaos in the centre of the park, and he tends to come out the winner in those types of situations. So I think he absolutely has to start. And also, I know Jurgen said it's not about quality, it's not about who's better than who, but based on the form he showed in that West Ham game, that's got to justify a start. You know, it's not fair on any player in the team if they can come on, deliver that kind of performance, and then not be rewarded with an actual role in the starting lineup as a result. So I think Oxlade-Chamberlain has to start for Liverpool in this match. And then I think ahead of that midfield, no surprises here. It's almost definitely going to be, barring any late aberrations with injury, Mo Salah on the right, Sadio Mane on the left, and Roberto Firmino down the centre. So taking just a quick little look at Watford then, I think we all know relatively what they're about. Obviously, they're now managed by Nigel Pearson. His first game, incidentally, was, of course, that win at Anfield earlier on in the season, where we beat them 2-0. And I think anyone who watched that game can testify it was a very, very difficult match. And the 2-0 scoreline, despite the fact that often Liverpool are absolutely fantastic and sometimes don't score as many goals as maybe you'd expect them to do based on the performance, it almost flatters us in a way. I think up until Mo Salah's goal in around about the 40th minute, we really struggled to break them down, and they had more big chances than we did up to that point. On the counter-attack, we allowed ourselves to be quite open, and Watford were almost devastating if it wasn't for a couple of wayward finishes and some pretty good saves from Alisson Becker. That game could have been a totally different story. And to be fair, I'm almost going to revise what I said earlier. I think maybe a draw was a fair result on reflection, because while Liverpool obviously had their big chances and took them, Watford had some big chances as well. And like I said, on any other day, they might have actually got a result out of that match. Of course, we do end up going 1-0 up, but then Liverpool's second goal is only right at the end of the game, and it's not a fluke by Mo Salah, but the assist by Origi certainly is, because he has a shot, it's going wide, and Mo Salah back heels it in. So up to that point, 1-0 is probably almost as fair a result as you're going to get from the performance. Watford did make it very difficult for us, and that was way back when, you know, we weren't even getting towards the business end of the season. Now they're in this position where they have been playing well, they've picked up a few more results, they've shown a lot more promise, they are still in the relegation zone, they know they've got to fight for every single point, they know they've got to fight for 3 points in every single game, regardless of the opposition. So I think as a result, they are going to put up one hell of a fight. In terms of injury news as well, they haven't really got any major absentees, so there's nothing for Liverpool to hang their hat on there. If Watford are going to win this game, it's going to be because they deserve it and because they've got all of their best players on the pitch. Jurgen Klopp was already talking in his press conference about how those kind of link-ups, the long balls from Ben Foster in goal all the way up to Troy Deeney, those knockdowns, those second balls, we're going to have to be better on them, because as he pointed out, we weren't good enough on those in the game against West Ham. We have got to improve from that West Ham performance. I think we will. I think Liverpool will be an awful lot better. I think the focus will be back now. The realisation that, you know, complacency is just not an option. Regardless of whether we were complacent, we simply cannot afford to even get close to that state, because if we do, then teams will absolutely pounce on it. West Ham very nearly did. We got out of jail a little bit with that last half-hour performance, but I don't think we can afford to be doing that every week. And if we want to get this Premier League wrapped up as quickly as possible, and I think most of us do, we're only 4 wins away from it now, then we've got to treat every game like a cup final, regardless of the lead we have in the table at the moment. So I do think Liverpool are going to win. I think it's going to be really, really tough. I don't think it's going to be any easier than the last 2 games against West Ham and Norwich. I think it'll be a fight. I don't think it'll be decided very early. But, of course, I'd always back these boys to come away with the result, because that is just the kind of team that Liverpool have made themselves at the moment. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully beaten Watford. Until then, bye for now.